My husband chose his ex-girlfriend's wedding over our son's birthday, so I filed for divorce. Then I found out they lost a baby together in a car accident and promised to always be there for each other. My husband James and I have been married for 3 years, and we have a son who just turned 1 last weekend. We had been planning his first birthday party for weeks, and I was so excited because it was going to be small but special. Just our families and a few close friends. About 2 weeks before the party, James told me that his high school girlfriend Chelsea was getting married, and the wedding was the same day as our son's birthday party. I thought he was just mentioning it and maybe feeling a little sad about missing it, which I understood because they had dated for 6 or 7 years during high school and stayed friends after. But then he said he wanted to go to the wedding. I was confused because obviously he couldn't miss our son's first birthday for someone else's wedding, even if they used to date. James said Chelsea had specifically invited him and that she really wanted him there because he was such an important part of her life. He felt like he owed it to her to be there on her special day. I told him that our son's first birthday was more important and that Chelsea would understand if he couldn't make it because he had family obligations. James got quiet and said he had already told Chelsea he would be there and didn't want to back out now. I asked him if he was seriously considering missing our baby's first birthday party to go to his ex-girlfriend's wedding. And he said it wasn't just any ex-girlfriend, that Chelsea was different, and I wouldn't understand. I asked him what he meant by that, and he said they had a special connection and that she had been there for him during some really hard times in his life, and he wanted to return the favor. I told him I didn't care about their special connection, and that his wife and son should come first. He said I was being unreasonable, and that the birthday party would be fine without him, and that our son wouldn't even remember it anyway. I was so angry I couldn't even respond. I just walked away because I knew if I kept talking, I would say something I would regret. The next few days were tense. James kept bringing up the wedding and trying to convince me that it was really important for him to be there, and that I should understand, because Chelsea didn't have a lot of family and really needed her friends there for support. I kept telling him that our son needed his father there for his first birthday, and that I needed my husband there to help host the party and celebrate our child. But James seemed more concerned about Chelsea's feelings than mine. James ended up going to the wedding and missing our son's birthday party completely. I had to explain to my parents and his parents why he wasn't there, and I made up some excuse about him having a work emergency because I was too embarrassed to tell them the truth. The party was nice, and our son had fun, but I kept thinking about how James was at another woman's wedding instead of celebrating his own child's milestone. James came home around midnight, and he was in such a good mood, which made me even more angry. He started telling me all about the wedding, how beautiful Chelsea looked in her dress, how elegant the whole ceremony was, and how much fun the reception was. He said Chelsea looked so happy and that she had thanked him multiple times for being there, and that it meant the world to her that he came. He said Chelsea's husband seemed like a really good guy and that he was happy for her because she deserved to find someone who would treat her well. I told him I was filing for divorce the next morning. James looked shocked and asked me why I was being so dramatic about one wedding. I told him it wasn't about one wedding. It was about the fact that he chose another woman over his family and didn't seem to see anything wrong with that. James said I was overreacting and that Chelsea was just a friend, and that he would have regretted not being there for her wedding for the rest of his life. I asked him if he would regret missing his son's first birthday, and he got quiet and said that our son would have other birthdays, but Chelsea would only get married once. I told him that was exactly the problem, that he clearly cared more about Chelsea than he did about us. James said that wasn't true, and that I was twisting everything around. I called a divorce lawyer the next day and started the process because I realized that James was never going to put our family first as long as Chelsea was in his life, and I couldn't live like that anymore. James has been trying to convince me to change my mind, but I know that this isn't something I can get past. I don't want to spend the rest of my marriage wondering if my husband is going to choose another woman over me and our son whenever she needs something. Update 1. I wanted to update everyone because a lot has happened since my last post. After I filed for divorce, James kept trying to get me to change my mind. He said he would cut contact with Chelsea if that's what I wanted, but I told him it was too late for that because the damage was already done and I couldn't trust him anymore. I found a small apartment across town that allows pets because we have a cat. And I was able to get my old job back where I worked before I had the baby. My old boss gave me a flexible schedule so I could handle childcare and the divorce proceedings. Moving out was harder than I expected because I kept finding little things that reminded me of when James and I were happy together, but I knew I was making the right decision. I've been taking my son to a nearby park every day, and we've gotten into a good routine with naps and meals and bedtime. James has been asking to see him, and I've been letting him come over for a few hours on weekends because I don't want to keep them apart. Even though I'm still angry about everything that happened. About 2 weeks after I moved out, James's mother Emily called me and asked if she could take me to lunch because she wanted to talk. I was surprised because Emily and I had always gotten along well, but she had been pretty quiet during the whole divorce situation, and I wasn't sure whose side she was on. I agreed to meet her at a little cafe near my work, and I brought the baby with me because I didn't have anyone to watch him. Emily spent the first few minutes playing with the baby and asking how I was adjusting to being on my own. Then she got really serious and said she needed to tell me something that she probably should have told me a long time ago. She said that she knew James had never gotten over Chelsea and that she had been worried about it since before our wedding, but she didn't know how to bring it up without causing problems. Emily told me that Chelsea had been James's first real love and that they had dated all through high school and into their first year of college, and that James had been completely devoted to her. She said that when Chelsea broke up with James during their sophomore year of college, he was devastated and didn't eat or sleep properly for months, and that she had never seen him so broken over anything before or since. Emily said that even after James and I started dating, she could tell that he still thought about Chelsea because he would get this distant look in his eyes sometimes when her name came up in conversation, or when he saw something that reminded him of her. She said she had hoped that getting married and having a baby would help James move on completely, but she realized after the wedding incident that he was still holding on to feelings for Chelsea that he should have let go of years ago. I asked Emily why she never said anything to me before, and she said she kept hoping that James would work through his feelings on his own, and that she didn't want to interfere in our marriage unless she absolutely had to. She said she felt guilty for not warning me earlier, but that she thought James loved me enough to choose our family over his past with Chelsea, and she was wrong about that. Emily told me that she completely supported my decision to divorce James, and that she thought I was doing the right thing for myself and for the baby, because we deserved to be with someone who would put us first without question. She said she was disappointed in James for letting his feelings for Chelsea ruin his marriage, and that she had told him he was making a huge mistake. But he didn't seem to understand how serious the situation was. Emily asked if she could still be part of the baby's life because she loved being a grandmother, and didn't want the divorce to mean that she couldn't see him anymore. I told her that I would never keep her away from her grandson, and that she could visit us whenever she wanted, because none of this was her fault, and the baby needed his grandmother in his life. We ended up talking for almost 2 hours, and Emily shared some stories about James's relationship with Chelsea that helped me understand why he was so attached to her, but also made me realize that I could never compete with that kind of history. Emily said Chelsea had been James's whole world when they were teenagers, and that he had planned to marry her, but something happened between them that made them break up, and she told me to ask James myself. I felt better after talking to Emily because it confirmed that I wasn't crazy for feeling like James's priorities were mixed up, and that this wasn't just about one wedding, but about deeper feelings that James had never resolved. Emily hugged me when we were leaving and said that James was lucky to have had me as a wife and that she hoped he would realize what he had lost before it was too late, but that she understood if I couldn't wait around for him to figure it out. Update 2. James came over last Sunday to spend time with the baby, and I had been thinking all week about my conversation with Emily. I decided that I needed to ask him directly about his feelings for Chelsea because I was tired of dancing around the real issue. James was playing with the baby on the living room floor, and our son was laughing and trying to grab James's glasses, which usually made me smile. But I just felt sad watching them together because I knew this wasn't how things were supposed to be. After the baby went down for his nap, I told James that we needed to have an honest conversation about Chelsea, and that I wasn't going to let him leave without getting some real answers about what was going on in his head. James looked uncomfortable and said he thought we had already talked about everything, and that he had apologized for missing the birthday party and offered to cut contact with Chelsea, which should be enough. I told him that his mother had come to see me, and that she had told me about how devastated he was when Chelsea broke up with him in college, and that she thought he had never really gotten over her. James's face changed when I mentioned his mother, and he asked what exactly Emily had told me. I said she had told me enough to know that his feelings for Chelsea went deeper than just friendship. I asked James directly if he was still in love with Chelsea, and he was quiet for a really long time and kept running his hands through his hair, which is something he does when he's nervous or trying to figure out what to say. I told him that I deserved an honest answer and that I wasn't going to judge him or get angry, but that I needed to know the truth so I could make decisions about our future. James finally said that he loved me, and that he loved our family, and that he wanted to make our marriage work, but that he also had feelings for Chelsea that he couldn't seem to get rid of no matter how hard he tried. He said it wasn't fair to me, and that he knew it was wrong, but that Chelsea had been such a big part of his life for so long that he couldn't just turn off those feelings. I asked him if he thought about Chelsea often, and he said yes, and that sometimes when we were doing normal everyday things like grocery shopping or watching TV, he would wonder what Chelsea was doing, or think about memories they had shared together. James said he knew it was unfair to me, and that he had tried to stop thinking about her, but that she would text him or call him occasionally, and all those feelings would come rushing back. James told me that he had never cheated on me, and that he would never act on his feelings for Chelsea, but that he couldn't lie to me anymore about having those feelings because it was eating him up inside. He said he thought that going to her wedding would give him some kind of closure and help him move on, but that seeing her so happy and beautiful had actually made his feelings stronger instead of helping him let go. I asked James if he thought Chelsea had feelings for him too, and he said he wasn't sure, but that she had always been affectionate with him when they talked, and that she had told him at the wedding that she missed having him in her life, and that her new husband didn't understand her the way James did. James said Chelsea had hugged him for a really long time when he was leaving the wedding, and that she had whispered that she loved him and would always love him, which confused him because she had just gotten married. I told James that I appreciated him being honest with me, but that this confirmed what I already knew, that our marriage couldn't work as long as he had unresolved feelings for another woman. James started crying and said he didn't want to lose me and the baby, and that he would do anything to make things right. But I told him that there was nothing he could do to change the fact that he was in love with someone else. James said he wanted to try couples therapy, and that maybe talking to someone professional would help him work through his feelings for Chelsea and figure out how to prioritize our marriage. I told him that I didn't think therapy could fix this, because he couldn't force himself to stop loving someone, and I couldn't force myself to be okay with sharing my husband's heart with another woman. I asked James if he would choose Chelsea if she left her husband and wanted to be with him, and he was quiet for a long time again and then said he didn't know and that he hoped he would never have to make that choice. I told him that the fact that he didn't immediately say no was all the answer I needed, and that I couldn't stay married to someone who wasn't sure if they would choose me over their ex-girlfriend. James left that night looking defeated. and he hasn't tried to convince me to change my mind about the divorce since then, which tells me that he knows I'm right about this and that our marriage can't be saved. I felt relieved after our conversation because at least now I knew the truth and I could stop wondering if I was making the right decision. Update 3. James called me 3 days ago and said he needed to see me because there was more to